everyone. Welcome to the APDS recruitment recommendations for the 25-26 academic cycle. I'm Dr. Surf, and I'm going to be moderating this session. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. We're going to kick things off with Dr. Fonsum from APDS to give a brief introduction. Take it away, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Stephen. Can you hear me now, right?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you and welcome. I'm Val Fonsam. I'm the president of APDS, and I'm really excited about this webinar today. I think participating, we also have Dr. Kerry Rosencrantz, who's the president-elect of the APDS. And of course, we have Dr. Sefin, who has done an amazing job trying to put this together. I'm going to make this remark really short because we really want to get into the meat of things. So welcome. This is an opportunity for us as we prepare for the next interview sessions, which are coming up really soon in September. The APDS want to help and give some guidelines and have also some conversation on how we can make this a really seamless process this year. So again, thank you for all those who are participating, who were talking and having this conversation. But more important, I want to thank Dr. Safin for really putting this together. I'm going to pass this over to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have a very talented panel with us tonight who we're all going to be going through the recruitment recommendations for this cycle. And we are so thankful that so many of you were able to submit questions ahead of time. So we have a great list of questions that we're going to be able to address throughout the webinar. And then also we'll have plenty of time at the end to have an additional live Q&A session. Just as a reminder to everybody, this session is being recorded, so if you would like to listen again, you don't have to worry about writing down notes or anything, and we will have access to the referenced materials that we're going to be talking about tonight on the APDS website. So without further delay, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. So Dr. Rosencrantz, you're up first.
Hi, I extend my welcome as well, and I think Dr. Fonsam did a nice job introducing me, but Carrie Rosencrantz, Program Director at Dartmouth, and looking forward to talking with all of you.
Dr. Miller-Hammond, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kimberly Miller-Hammond. I'm the Program Director at Morehouse School of Medicine.
Thank you. And Dr. Johnson, you're next.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mel Johnson, and I'm the Program Director at Gunderson Lutheran Medical Foundation in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. And just briefly, I'm Jen Surfin. I'm the current chair of the recruitment committee for APDS. So we're going to start the webinar by handing over to Dr. Johnson to discuss applicant considerations in the recruitment recommendations.
Thank you again for all that are joining us tonight. I really just have the one slide, but I'll go into much more detail about each of the individual points. I hope tonight, especially for the candidates that are joining us, that this will make it very clear as far as what our recommendations are, and then also for any programs or medical schools that might be joining us to understand what the APDS recommendations are so that we are all really speaking exactly the same language. I would say one of the most frustrating things that I have heard from applicants is that they're being told one thing by their medical school advisors and they're being told something else by program directors. So I would really love it if we can all get onto the same page so that there's clarity for all of the candidates, because I think that will also decrease stress levels across the board. So out of our applicant considerations from the APDS, point number one is the applicant should use available data and their unique characteristics to determine the number of submitted applications and number of interviews to accept. So I thought I would break down, that's a big statement with a lot of meaning behind it. And so I thought I would break that down into components before we then talk about signals. So when you look at using your own available data, so there's really two ways you can look at data. Is you can look at what your data is as an applicant, and then you can also look at the data that is available out there from things like NRMP to look at what types of programs are matching what types of applicants. So again, what type of data can you look at yourself to determine how, essentially how, what type of programs you should be applying to. One of the first things that you think about and that we think about as program directors would be the USMLE scores or COMLEX scores. When you're looking at your own scores, I would say as an applicant to surgery, again, step one now, we would all be looking for a pass on the first time for USMLE step one. And then for USMLE step two, certainly programs are looking at the actual score. And I would say as an applicant, if you are at or above the mean, that should give you some level of comfort. If you are below the mean, then again, your holistic review of your application may elevate your application even if your score is considered below the mean for step two. Sometimes we are also able to look at grades, although many medical schools are no longer using letter grades or even numbers or GPAs anymore. So we look at, if there are grades, we look at those. If it's pass fail, again, we're really looking, have you passed all of your classes? If they do give honors or near honors, we certainly are looking at that as program directors. And then if there is a class rank, but again, as the years go by, I'm seeing that less and less. But I would say if you are at least in the top 50% of your class, that would be considered a positive when, again, we look at your application holistically. Certain medical schools do still use AOA and Gold Humanism Honor Society. So certainly we look for that, but certain medical schools don't have that. So that's not an automatic checkbox for us either. Again, it's just part of that holistic review. And then looking at your clerkship evaluations, because we are able, even if they don't give you letter or numerical grades, we are able to read those comments. So we are certainly looking at those as well. So when you look at your own data as an applicant, those are really probably the most discrete things that you want to look at to determine your competitiveness. When you look at your own unique characteristics, again, those are many of the things that we're picking out as we do that holistic review. It would be, what type of setting did you grow up in? Are you a rural kid? Did you grow up in an urban setting? Have you had global experiences? Do you have any additional degrees? Maybe you have an MPH or an MD PhD. Again, those things could steer you towards a certain pathway. We look at your research background. What types of research have you done? Have you done a lot of basic science research? You might be an applicant that's more interested in a heavy research program with a couple dedicated years of research. Have you done a lot of clinical research? That might be a better fit for an independent program. Or do you come to us with work experience? Is this really your second occupation? And then also, I think as you're looking at your own unique characteristics, many of you may have a significant other. Some of you may have children as well, but all of those things come into play with really who you are as an applicant and what types of programs you will be looking at. There are, as you're trying to figure out then, how competitive will I be in this application process, there are so many sites that you can use that are highly reliable, but you really need to use a number of them. I asked my interns today and I said, what site are current applicants using to decide what programs to apply to? And they said, sadly, many people are using Reddit, and they feel like Reddit is probably the least accurate. And so that is not on my list of sites that you should use to give you accurate information about programs. So there is the first site that I'll recommend really it comes to us from the American College of Surgeons. And it's a site that's based on an old booklet that we used to use called So You Want to Be a Surgeon. But that site really goes into and asks several questions that you need to be asking yourself as you're deciding what programs to apply to. You should be asking yourself, am I more interested in a university-based or an independent medical center program? That's a huge question, and that can really cut down the number of programs that you're looking at. Do you plan on going on to fellowship after your residency? Again, if you plan on being a pediatric surgeon, you probably will need to go to a program where you could get a couple of years of research. So again, just those first couple of questions can really narrow down your search. Do I want to train in an urban or a rural environment, or maybe suburban? Again, we're just trying to narrow down all of these programs that you're looking at. Are you locked into a specific area of the country? So if you have a significant other, have they said, you know, I'll move to these states, but there's not a chance I'll go to these other states. So it's important to include other people in that process if again, you have a family. What is your level of personal and family commitment? So again, you may look at some programs as being more family friendly or children friendly. So those will be characteristics that you'll be looking at as you dive deeper into the selection programs. And then again, looking realistically at your academic track record. Where should you apply? You've really got to try to figure out, you know, if I'm a mid-tier candidate, should I really be applying to the most competitive programs? There are certain things, again, that would make your pathway very difficult. For instance, if you've failed step 1 or step 2, you would definitely, if you still want to apply to surgery, you've definitely got to have a backup plan in that situation. Another question I'm asked very frequently by candidates is, should I do a sub-internship or audition elective at an institution that I'm considering? I certainly think, especially if I've had some applicants really unsure if they want to go the more university-based route versus an independent program. So if you have the ability to do 2 rotations, you might want to do one of each if you're undecided on what type of program you think is the best fit, because I think you'd get a great idea for what those programs can provide for you. So I think that's a great opportunity. If there's a program that you're really interested in, but it's way outside of your geographic area where you currently live, you might want to consider going there and spending a month. And again, seeing, is this a geographic area where I think I could live? It can certainly help you, in particular, if you go and really work your tail off and get along well with everyone. That certainly can elevate you in their eyes as well. So I certainly think audition electives can help you, and they can even help you narrow down your search. What factors should I consider at each program? That's where a lot of these other websites come into play. Some great websites to use include FRIDA. That is an AMA residency and fellowship database, and it's free online. We'll show you all of the ACGME programs. Some programs have not put in an expanded listing. You'll really want to look at the ones that have given you that expanded listing, because it will give you a significant amount of information about their program, and you can compare programs side to side. You also might want to consider using the AAMC Residency Explorer, which again can allow you to narrow down that search as much as possible. Once you believe you've gotten your number of programs that you're interested in down a bit, then you want to go to individual program websites, because I really think that's where you'll get the most significant information about that program as you try to decide how many programs and which ones you intend to apply to. So as we talk about the number of programs, I want to get back to our second recommendation, which is that we recommend that applicants utilize their 15 signals to indicate their top 15 programs. And yes, we mean it as simply as that sounds. So that blue point underneath point number 2 says, we recommend using program signals to indicate the top 15 programs to each candidate, regardless of home medical school status, audition rotation, or any other connection to the program. So for us as program directors, it helps us the most if we know that you have signaled your top 15 programs. So that may include your home medical school program. It may include 2 programs that you did away rotations. Use your 15 signals for your top 15 programs. Do not game the system. Just be brutally honest with where you want to go and where you see that program being the best fit for you. That if everyone's trying to game it and play the system, we don't know how to interpret your signals. So I plead with you as a program director, please just use those signals for your top 15 programs, and then we will all be on the same page. We can be honest with you if you're being honest with us.
Dr. Johnson, thank you so much. We're going to move on now to Dr. Miller-Hammond to speak on program considerations.
Good evening again, and thank you everyone for joining us. I have a few more slides. And starting off, Dr. Johnson brought up the holistic review very often, and still very much recommended that each program utilize the holistic application review for their selection process. In addition, we want to make sure that programs are very transparent about what their values and their characteristics are, and using those in order to provide the applicants insight into this whole process. Again, going back to USMLE and COMLEX, we do encourage that all programs consider either COMLEX or the USMLE, and we encourage them to be very open and transparent about their policies and expectations around these exams. We are asking to de-emphasize this application cycle, the step 1 and step 2 numerical scores, but the standardized scores for step 2 and for the COMLEX level 2 will be considered during that holistic review. Next slide. The first round of interviews, we'll start talking about interviews now. The first round of interviews should not be offered prior to Wednesday, October 22nd. That first round of interviews should be sent through the 22nd through the 31st of October. If programs do plan to provide interviews prior to that date, we ask for transparency around that time outside of that window. In addition, allowing 48 hours for the candidates to respond. We want to make sure that each candidate has a chance to actually review these interview offers before another offer is extended to a different candidate. And there's a strong recommendation for programs to only send out the number of invites that they plan to actually have interview slots for. So if a program, for example, has 40 slots available, only to send out 40 invitations. And after there has been a denial or a cancellation, would you offer another invitation? Next slide. And now around the interview itself, there's been lots of discussion and questions about whether will be virtual recommendations or in person or a combination hybrid of both. The AAMC does advocate for virtual interviews, as stated, to provide equity, cost savings, and reduce the environmental impact. But our task force is recommending that each program consult with their GMEC and identify the best practices for their interview format. Again, the emphasis is around the methods that we see here, which are equitable opportunities for all invited applicants, uniformity of the evaluation process within the program, transparency about the process, and mitigation strategies to prevent bias.
Thank you, Dr. Miller-Hammond. Okay, we have now come to the portion of the webinar where we are going to open up to Q&A for the remaining time that we have left. I'm going to start this session by just starting with a few questions that we received ahead of time. And my hope is I'm going to open these up to the entire panel so that everybody can weigh in on some of these points. So I'll start with a question relating to program director advice. So for the panel, what filters are recommended for programs to use when selecting applications to review? And this may be different for every program, but what are some good starting points?
I'm happy to field that one. Really, since we increased the number of signals up to 15, in the last application cycle, that was the very first filter that I deployed, was which candidates signaled my program. Just to give you an idea on numbers, and again, this is just from my own personal program, we had over 600 applications, and I had over 100 of those that signaled me. So that tells me those over 100 people have ranked my program in the top 15. So I certainly used that, and I did complete holistic review on every single person that signaled my program.
I want to piggyback on what Dr. Johnson said, and I also last year used the signals as the initial filter, and we had about 1,300 applicants and around a little bit less than 300 who signaled.
Thank you. I'm going to stick to the program director question for just a second. And this is for everybody. When you're looking at applicants, do future fellowship or practice choices affect who you interview or who eventually matches to your program, and why?
I guess I'll start with that one if it's okay. I think it's going to be very program dependent. So what I would encourage all of you to do, and you already heard some of this, is not only look at Frida and some of the other well-vetted sites, I would say, but also look through the program websites, see where people did fellowships. You might see some programs where a lot of people do go into surgical oncology. And if that's an interest of yours, it might be a program you want to pursue. I think the applicants more drive that. A lot of people change their mind through residency. So the bigger buckets that you all should be aware of about yourself, which also might change, but probably less frequently, is, are you someone who wants to be an academic surgeon? Do you want to be a great community general surgeon? Are you someone who is a bit older? Dr. Johnson mentioned some people who have had other careers who might say, you know what, I don't want to spend 7 or 8 years in training. I want to be done in 5. So you want to look for programs that are likely more independent, that are not going to require you to take career development time off. So I don't know that program directors are typically looking for very specific candidates, only people going into PD surgery, but they might well be looking for people who have a track record of academic medicine, or a track record that really reflects more, I want to serve a community and be a general surgeon in a more rural environment, or something that would match the nature of what that program is trying to train.
Thank you.
I can
Dr.
make
Johnson,
a
yeah.
few comments there. As a Gunderson Lutheran Medical Foundation, we are an independent surgical residency program. And so we tend to produce 2/3 of our graduates go directly into practice after 5 years of training. 1/3 elect to do fellowships. So when I am, unlike if you look at nationwide statistics, it's more like 80+% of programs produce residents that go directly into fellowship. So I particularly look, when I'm doing holistic review, in people that are primarily interested in going directly into general surgery. But again, about 1/3 of our graduates do go into fellowship, so we support that as well. But I think that'll be very program dependent. And again, there will be certain university-based programs where they say there's automatically a 2-year research requirement. So I think that's got to be, as the applicant, you've really got to look at, where do you think you're headed? And I know sometimes it's hard to tell. So let's say you don't know for sure, and you think, well, maybe I want to do some research, maybe I want to do a fellowship. Then you might want to go to a program, or focus your interests on programs that offer at least that opportunity to do research.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple questions from the chat now, since some of these are coming up kind of rapid fire. So for the panel, as a program that accepts DO candidates, can I mandate step 2? I'm assuming that's step 2 USMLE, and ignore their COMLEX.
I would love to answer that question. I have a little passion
Thank
around
you.
this issue. We saw some really great data, and for anyone who is on the call who is a DO, really great data about the equivalency of COMLEX to USMLE in terms of predicting what we would consider markers of success, things like passing your boards, performing well on training exams. So hopefully what we will see in the coming years is that USMLE will not be required. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming for those of you in the osteopathic programs. We don't have to tell you that. But at this second, you will see that there are programs that continue to mandate STEP scores. And so I would be aware of where you're applying. For program directors, I think Dr. Ortiz asked the question.
Mhm.
It can be mandated, but I think you've heard a lot already about transparency. If you mandate USMLE in addition to COMLEX scores, I would make sure that that is clearly on your social media accounts, on your website, on FRIDA, so that the applicants don't spend time and money applying to programs if they don't have the right qualifications, so to speak.
I just want to add to what Dr. Rosencrantz said. I think for Dr. Ortiz's question, I think the question is mandate. And, I think that's where there's a little bit of conflict from what Dr. Safin on behalf of the APDS put out there. So I like Dr. Rosencrantz says, these are comparable exams. So you can clearly state that you would rather have a USMLE. That's on you and your program, but that should be open. But mandating people to take that, I think it just adds a little bit of a caveat to that.
Mhm. Just to stay on the theme of USMLE and COMLEX, there was another question a little bit down in the chat about having access to scores. So for step one, if applicants took their exam prior to the pass-fail, you will still have access to a numerical score, and we do still have access to numerical scores for step two. So use that information as you wish, but there are still going to be numerical scores as objective pieces of information. There were a couple questions I'm just going to kind of briefly highlight. So APDS does not have a firm stance on virtual versus in-person. We really want you guys to review with your institutions and base your interview style on your program mission and how you want to proceed. There are plenty of strategies available, both in-person, virtual, as well as hybrid, that have been utilized and are currently being studied. And we will adjust as the recruitment setting changes over the years, but currently we don't have a firm recommendation one way or the other. If I did a sub-I at a program, is it expected to signal them? As Dr. Johnson said, with the 15 signals that you have, please signal your top 15 places. If you are participating in a sub-I and not signaling them, but you're by participation signaling, you're technically getting an extra signal, and that goes against the equity that we're really hoping to accomplish with our candidates in surgery. So please use your 15 signals for your top 15 places. For the panel, can you guys describe how each of you use letters of recommendation in your holistic review process?
I can start. I will say I use that fairly often. It's a big marker for me, letters of recommendation. So I usually recommend to applicants when they're having conversations with those they would like to do a letter of recommendation, that they ask for strong letters of recommendation and have had some sort of conversation well before they've asked the first time, to make sure that they have a letter that is going to reflect them in a positive light. Because I will say, for me, it is a fairly big deal.
I would like to say that we definitely use the letter of recommendations as part of the holistic review. And in particular, what I'm looking for when I read those letters is a letter writer who clearly knows the applicant very well and clearly worked with them. It used to be almost an absolute requirement that you'd have a chairman's letter. And I only find chairman's letters to be helpful if they actually worked with the applicant clinically. and clearly know them, or maybe they did research with them, but someone that knows them. If it's, interestingly, I tend to group when I'm reading applicants' files. So I'll, for instance, read all of the University of Wisconsin applicants all together, and not to pick on UW, because certainly I don't see this coming from them, but there are certain schools where it literally is the same letter from the chair for applicant after applicant. And by grouping them and reading them all together, I can tell if the letters are actually personalized or not. So I look for a personal letter that clearly shows that they know this applicant. If it clearly looks like they don't and it's a form letter, I don't count it against the applicant at all. I just don't. I just disregard that letter completely. So my advice to all of the applicants is please, please, please ask for letters from people that know you very, very well. It may not be the program director or the chair, but a well-written letter by someone that knows you well is worth 10 times just a name that we may be familiar with.
I just want to add to that quickly, which is ask your mentors who writes a good letter. Because one thing that I find is a huge source of bias is sometimes I think as program directors, we actually really fall for the letter writer more than the candidate. Some people just know how to make a candidate jump off a page, and it's not fair to all of you at all, but it is what it is. So a lot of you really will only work closely with a few faculty members, but if you have a few good options, ask your advisors, ask your mentors who they know, ask your program directors in your own programs if you can, who writes a good letter recommendation, because it's not just about knowing you, but it's actually how they can make you pop off a page.
Dr. Serafin, can I make a comment about that question on personal statement?
Absolutely.
Right. So, I've reviewed a lot of personal statements, and it's very intriguing to me when I read some of them, and you have these candidates talk about, this is what I want to do. They tell a story about their background, don't tie it to like an attribute, and then I'm looking for this kind of program. I want to be an academic surgeon. I want a program that's going to do this for me, that for me, and then they end their personal statement. And I'm thinking, what are you bringing to the table, right? So your last sentence, last paragraph should be what you're actually bringing to the table. Every past experience that you've had, you want to tie it to some attribute, resilience, compassion, team player, all of that. If not, you just wrote that beautiful statement that might make Dr. Johnson cry because it's so passionate and so, but then she's going to be like, what are you bringing to it? So you want this, but what are you bringing? So don't forget that. And I have to like correct a lot of personal statements. And I'm reading this, I don't see what you're bringing. You're telling me everything that you want, but you're not telling me what you're going to bring to that program. So please don't forget that.
Thank you, Dr. Fonson. Would any other panelists like to contribute to what tips and tricks there are for personal statement writing?
It is a personal statement. It is not a resuscitation of your CV. So don't break it down and then I did this and then I did this. Really tell your story. What's unique, what's interesting, why a program would want to train.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat about if we use signals as an initial filter for offering interviews, is it even worth applying to 20 plus programs? I'm going to field that one since that's been a topic of much interest. So when we initially had 5 signals back several years, for the past few years, we definitely were avoiding the soft cap on applications. But when we were considering increasing the program signal numbers, we definitely were fearful that it would create an application cap. And that is absolutely not what we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to provide applicants with agency to express their true interest in their top 15 programs while also having some level of comfort that programs will interview and review applications that did not signal, or applicants that did not signal. So yes, even though you only have 15 signals for your top 15, please do still apply to other programs that you're interested in. But the data does suggest that signaling a program is a very strong indicator that you're interested, and you do have better odds of gaining an interview invitation when you signal a program. There was a question about couples matching that I'd like the panel to weigh in on. I know Dr. Rosenkrantz, I think you mentioned this in the chat, but for couples matching into different specialties, would you recommend reaching out to programs if a significant other receives an interview? And if so, what's the best time to do that?
Oops, I thought I sent a private chat back. I guess not.
You may have. I think I just maybe see all of them.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just didn't want to disrupt everyone, but was trying to answer a few questions on the side. Program directors, remember, are getting hounded with emails, so it is tough to keep up. But that said, I think a lot of programs are not nearly as savvy as we would like to be, meaning some are probably in close touch with other departments with the couples match, and others have no idea it's going on. So I always think it's a great idea to reach out to either a program coordinator or a program director if your significant other, your couples match partner, does receive an interview invite and you have not yet heard from the program. I do think it's worth reaching out. You don't want to make phone calls. Honestly, no one's going to call you back, but certainly an email to a coordinator or the program director or both, I think, can be very helpful.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat about our opinions regarding the use of AI to assist with writing letters of recommendation.
It's happening. I don't know that that's an opinion. It's more a fact. It's happening.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that, Dr. Rosenkrantz. It's happening. There's nothing you can do about that. It's the way of the future. We need to embrace it in a positive way. As long as, that letter is gonna capture the essence of what you're trying to communicate.
Now, I think really importantly for all of you as candidates, there are programs who are using software to check if your personal statement was written by AI. So while letters of recommendation, I think, are acceptable through AI and people are then heavily editing them, do not let AI write your personal statement.
I completely agree with that. It needs, and we've all read thousands of personal statements now. And so what we're really looking for is your story that is told in your voice. It is totally okay to use a tool like AI. I used a friend who is an editor. When I wrote my personal statement, she edited it for me so it just sounded, so everything was perfect about it otherwise. And I see AI as being your own personal editor. But again, it's got to be your story in your voice. Otherwise, again, if I get something that just looks like everyone else's personal statement, it doesn't stand out at all. It doesn't cause me to remember anything about that candidate. So I would only use AI really as an editor.
I just want to add one more thing, is that several programs are using AI to actually help process through applications, to actually do the help with the application review themselves. So as Dr. Fonsom said, AI is here to stay. I think we all just have to figure out how to use it responsibly.
Great question. We're going to slightly shift gears because there's a little bit of a theme in the chat now. So let's talk about international medical graduates. And one of the questions that came up was, for an IMG, for letters of recommendation, would you prefer at least one from a surgeon we've worked with back home, or is it better to prioritize US-based letters from their experiences?
I think it's good to have at least one from back home who knows you well and can speak to you much better than someone who you may have done just a month or 2 months working with, especially if it's a mentor or someone you've done research with.
Nice. I'd also like to just comment on that as well. Your letter writers really should be folks that have personal experience with you, and that, and as Dr. Rosenkrantz said, can really kind of have you come off the page. Because if we don't know you from the next applicant, those comments, those personal experiences really do create a lot of meaning in our holistic review process. So it's really important. And this, I will just, I will put a plug in for the survey of program requirements that we had for our surgery programs, where we asked program directors very specifically, what types of letters do you require? From who do you require? We have just published on the APDS website program specific answers to those questions. And so that gives you as candidates another tool to look into, hey, do I need to go get a letter from a surgeon, or is it okay to have a non-surgeon write me a letter of recommendation because I had a great experience? So highly encourage you guys to review those results and review those program specific requirements.
Can I
Oh,
just make
Dr.
one
Rosenkrantz,
comment, Jen,
yeah.
if you don't mind? For those of you who are dual applying, be honest with yourselves, be honest with people who directly ask, but be sure you have a different application. You don't want to be a general surgery applicant with 3 vascular letters or 3 cardiothoracic letters. And again, this is just being transparent. I hate to say it, but general surgery does not want to feel like your backup program. So make sure that you have letter writers, not only who know you well, but who know you well across general surgery. You can have 1 cardiac or thoracic letter, 1 vascular, but make sure your application doesn't look like a dual applicant. If you are dual applying, remind your letter writers that you should not have a letter for vascular surgery that says, you know, Jill Smith would make an excellent vascular surgeon or vice versa. So just be very aware for dual applicants.
Also, just as a follow-up question, how can, in panelist opinions, how can international medical graduates stand out in the obviously large application number field currently?
I would say number one for our program to be looked at the most closely would be signaling our program. Because I, again, am looking at that, I look at that applicant pool first, and I'm looking at the IMG candidates that signal us and doing this same holistic review that I'm doing for my MD and DO applicants. So signaling is the big one.
Okay.
I
Um,
also want to add that I think, unfortunately, since step 1 scores were like, step 1 became pass fail, IMGs had real big opportunity, a lot of them to score really high, and then, and so now with that, and this is just being very realistic as they face these challenges of being an IMG and trying to get into the program, and I'm glad Dr. Severin and team put it out there in that survey where every program has to state if they take IMGs and what is required. So please go look at every program and see what the specific requirements are. And it would just be smart for anybody to not, if you're an IMG, not to be sending your applications to a program that says we don't take IMGs. Okay, that just doesn't make sense. So go to the IMG friendly programs. And again, this is just being very realistic and trying to help you. Just go to the programs that are very friendly towards IMGs and apply that. And believe it or not, research also, a background of research is also going to be very helpful for you.
Thank you. We have another question that I'd like to open up to the panel. What is your advice for current prelim residents who are applying for categorical positions?
I think it goes back to telling your story a little bit. I do think most people who are in prelim years do talk a little bit about what they've learned, why they're still passionate about surgery, maybe what was surprising, what was harder than they thought, but a little bit about your story. Maybe more for interview than personal statement, but have some insight into if you are someone who applied in the match. and ended up matching into a prelim spot, why you think that might have happened and how you've become stronger because of it. I think that's always a great story to tell. And mostly just do an excellent job this year. It's hard. You all who are doing prelim years know you're doing the job of a PGY1 and then you're doing it under a little bit more of a microscope, and it is challenging. But do it well. Know your patients. Prepare for clinic, prepare for the operating room, make sure that you develop some close advisors, some strong mentors who are going to advocate for you, get those strong letters of recommendation, and just do a great job to strengthen your application as much as you can.
I would just piggyback on that. Make sure that you get all new letters of recommendation. If you've done your prelim year, they should all be coming from the program where you are spending that year, and don't reuse the ones that you used the first time around.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dr. Johnson, because if you don't get letters from the program that you're actually doing a prelim year, it tells a lot. It tells a lot. So please just make sure you get new letters from the program. So it's again there are two different categories of prelim residents. The residents who wanted to apply to a very competitive residency program, and then they didn't match. They could have matched in general surgery, and so they didn't match, and then now they're reapplying to general surgery. It's much easier for those candidates than people who didn't apply to general surgery and did not match. I think what Dr. Rosenkrantz said, you got to be able to explain why you think you didn't match and what you're doing differently this year, what you learned during this one year, and what you're bringing that is different from the year that you didn't match.
All right. This is probably going to be a question for each panel member, so I'd like everybody to weigh in. How do you anticipate utilizing thalamus cortex in the upcoming application cycle?
I have absolutely no idea.
I was just going to say, I don't know if I will.
Our silence is deafening.
What I can say from my working knowledge of thalamus cortex is that this will be a tool that program directors have access to help us screen and help us review applications. And there are going to be some tools that will help us better compare schools to one another. So when we're looking at different schools that have pass fail versus class rank versus numerical scores, thalamus and cortex is really trying to help us better understand a student from school A comparing to a student from school C. So it's really going to be a tool for holistic review. I think that's where a lot of us are going to probably settle into.
And Thalamus just acquired something called Metacratic, which is AI, which a number of programs have run in the background of their normal process. But I think what's nice with the holistic review and with some of the AI screening technology available is that it's forced programs to really think about who they are. And by doing that, it turns candidates into who the candidates are, as opposed to just a test score or an honors grade or some of the more quantitative things that we'd rather not use in the process. So this goes back to, I think, what Dr. Johnson said in the beginning, which is as you're looking at where you're going to use your 15 cycles, really think about the culture of a program, the type of people who are training in that program, and whether that is kind of a culture that's going to match you and your application. Because I think that's how a lot of people are going to start to use the AI, is to link applicants with the values of different programs. And the programs are all different in some really good ways.
Thank you. Another question from the chat. If I'm an off-cycle student, do you accept letters from sub-Is done in the last year? I'm assuming that means previous year. I think I can speak for the panel. Yes, we would accept those.
Even third year clerkship, if you really connected with someone and they know you well and can write that strong letter, that's fair game too.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to a question that was asked during registration. So for candidates who potentially graduated a number of years ago, how do you consider those applicants, and do you have any advice for them?
I would certainly apply to preliminary spots as well as categorical. I think sometimes it's just getting your foot back in a door to prove that your clinical brain is working. So don't be afraid to get in through that door with a preliminary spot.
I think that's great advice. And I believe you can also find it as you search through some of those databases that we discussed earlier. There are certain programs that say you must be within a certain number of years of clinical experience in order to apply to their program. So you should definitely be delving into that if you've been out for 6 years, because there may be some programs that just say, for instance, our institution has that rule. It's 2 years from your last clinical experience. But again, every institution is very different.
I'm going to pop in one. I think we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. For the panel, what are your thoughts on second looks? If you're doing virtual, do you do them in person? Do you do them, what are your strategies for second look events?
I'll say we have decided, and our institution has decided and recommended to continue with virtual interviews. So we do have in-person second looks where the candidates will be able to come and experience what our didactic day is like for our residents. So
Our institution does 100% virtual interviews, and then we offer a second look for anyone that would like to come, but we do not have, our institutional policy is that the second look candidates are not allowed any interactions with faculty. They are allowed to interact with the residents in a very informal way. But our program coordinator does help set up those experiences if people want to come. We do not use those in any way when we are ranking our candidates.
Same. I think a lot of programs you'll see that no stakes, just visits for the candidates, not for the programs.
Okay. And are there any other points of advice regarding how you navigate the numerous applications that we receive every year? Any tips and tricks for the PDs in the room or in the audience?
Go ahead, Carrie. I'm still processing my thoughts.
I guess, Kimberly, anything from you? I guess what I would say is it goes back to every program is going to have a different algorithm to run things. And I always thought I was the only program director in the country who looked at personal statements and hobbies, but it turns out there was a double AMC webinar a couple of weeks ago, and the program director from Cooperstown said the exact same thing, and I was shocked. So, for us, my particular program, we look a lot at things like Gold Humanitarian Awards, much more than AOA or STEP scores. That's just our value system. That is not to say that's what every program looks for. So I think for program directors in the audience, figuring out what the value system of your program is and what kind of candidates might match into that makes sense.
Again, I use signaling, number one for sure. And then number two, I really look for somewhere in their application if they, we look to train, again, broadly trained general surgeons after 5 years, many going directly into practice. So I'm really looking for people that are seeking that type of training. So again, looking for who are the candidates that are really the best fit for our program.
So I just want to add one thing as when you look for candidates as program director, my good friend Karen Brazo, I was talking about fit, like, program culture and looking for people who fit into the program. And she cautioned me on that and said, listen, at times when we think of fit, then we don't tend to see other things that people that might not traditionally fit in that program would bring into your program. And then slowly your program just becomes this one thing. So as program directors, my caution for everybody is that your program has its own character and its own, culture, but you don't want your program to like slowly die. So again, as you open up a little bit and instead of looking at people who might bring something a little different, maybe not radically different from what your culture is, but something a little different to keep your program continue to be vibrant.
All right. Well, I want to just take this moment to thank everybody for participating in the panel tonight. This has been really lively and exciting. Again, thank you to everybody who participated for the questions ahead of time. And I just wanted to, again, remind the audience that we do have resources available on the APDS website. So please feel free to use this QR code for the recruitment requirements. And for the program directors in the audience, if you don't see your program on here, please reach out to us. We will send you the survey link so that you can provide your information about your program and share with applicants and prospective folks looking at your program in the future. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you.